Well guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm currently inside the STI right now because I have the heater going on and it's quite loud. This way you guys can actually hear me. This morning we went ahead and picked up 2 cans of starting fluid, which should be a lot stronger than just using brake cleaner. So hopefully we can get a startup. I do need to make sure, I was told to remember to see if I have my old base map on the car. I know the battery's been disconnected, access port was taken out and all that stuff, so I don't know if the base map is still on here. It should, because it saves on the ECU, but we're gonna make sure that that base map is currently on the car, and then we need to still fix that coolant leak, and then we're gonna go ahead and start this car up. I think the coolant leak is coming from that clamp right there. I was trying to see, because I initially thought it was my coolant crossover, but I don't see. The O-ring doesn't look like it failed or anything, at least visibly looking. But then I went to wiggle every coolant line around it, and that line was loose. As soon as I wiggled it, more coolant came out. So I need to go ahead and tighten that, and hopefully that takes care of our coolant leak. If so, that would be amazing, so I don't have to pull off the manifold again. So we just went ahead, got that line tightened back up, and it looks like that's exactly where it's leaking from. And I just checked underneath the car. It is completely dry, so at least no dry leaks overnight, which is a good sign. Hopefully, if we can get this car started, we won't have any more leaks. Okay, going. Wait 1 sec. Let me make sure my map is on here. Ready? Hit it. That battery's dead. We're getting so close to getting this started. Instead of spraying the turbo, we pulled off the charge pipe to the intake manifold, hoping that it would be a quicker start. We can hear it starting. The battery is still like kind of dead, so we're putting it on the jump pack right now. Gonna wait a few minutes. We're putting also the space heater straight onto like the motor, so it warms it up a little bit. Hopefully we can get this started. Everything sounds healthy. No more leaks that I can see right now, obviously without the car on and up to operating temperature. But this is all good sign right now. I'm just gonna go run through the car and make sure everything is 100% perfect. So as we're waiting, we have the heater facing at the motor, the front mount, so hopefully it gets some warm air throughout the motor. I'm gonna finish up the wiring and my gauges, so when I do get this first start, I can monitor AFRs and make sure everything is looking okay. So like I mentioned in the last video, I am going to be tapping into this fuse box that is on your panel here. I just went ahead and removed all of this so I can easily access this. I am pulling this 10 amp fuse. This is the cigarette outlet, which only works on ignition, which is what I want for my gauges. So I'm adding an add-a-fuse that will be placed right in there, and then I'm going to wire this in obviously to the 2 powers for my oil pressure and AFR gauge. And there we go, I have the power going into the cigarette fuse tapped in, and then I have the ground on this chassis bolt here. What I ended up doing with this signal, and I forget what the other one is, just tied them off together. I'm not using these right now. I just didn't want to cut them in case I ever used them in the future. But now we should have power to the gauges. No power. Why don't I have power? So what ended up being the issue is on the add-a-fuse, there are 2 slots. It's not really focusing, but on this left, there is another slot which I had the fuse in, and I was not getting power. So I moved the fuse over, and now we have power to both gauges. All right, we are now going to see if this car will start now. Well, this thing is fighting us every step of the way to get this thing running. I think the game plan right now, we are running later into the day now. I do need to head over to Josh's pretty soon for a surprise birthday party thing that is going on. So I think what I'm going to do is pull the spark plugs right now. They're probably covered in fuel. And then I'm going to clean it off, get the fuel off, and then I'm going to torch them, heat them up, and then put it in. Hopefully that will give us a little edge when we go to start this thing up. So I just went through and I pulled the cylinder 2 injector it has fuel on it for sure, but not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. But you guys can most definitely see that this does have fuel on it. So I want to pull all of them, let it air out a little bit while I'm at Josh's. When we get back home, we can torch these, put them back in, and hopefully get a good first startup tonight for you guys, because I really do not want to end this video without giving you guys a proper first startup. Also, for everyone that thinks doing spark plugs with the motor in on a Subaru is impossible and very hard to do, it really is not that difficult. You only need a few tools. You need to have a 16 mil deep socket, a 3-inch extension, and whatever ratchet that you guys choose. And then obviously you guys will need a 12 mil for your coil pack. But I just got both of the cylinder 2 and 4 out without removing anything. Normally when I do this, I remove the battery, but I was still able to access the spark plugs without removing anything. So it most definitely is doable. You do have to get in some weird angles to get it out, but it's most definitely doable. What I do is I will throw, after I have the coil pack out, I will throw my 16 mil and my extension in first. Once this is in, I will put the ratchet on the extension from there, because yes, it is quite tight on the fuel rail, or not the fuel rail, on the actual frame of the car. Sits very close, and if you don't do this way, I don't even know if it's possible to put it all in together. I've always done it this way, but it's most definitely doable for all you guys out there that are working on your Subaru for maybe your first time. It took me probably 10 minutes just to get the cylinder 4 spark plug out, because the placement on cylinder 4 is so much closer to the frame rail, and it just makes it that much harder. You have to put the socket in first, and then the extension, and then the ratchet, and then you have to try to disconnect the extension from the socket and that tight space just to be able to pull out the spark plug. But we got this one pulled. This one most definitely has, it looks like, a little bit more fuel on it. So now we're going to go ahead and work on cylinder 1 and 3. The passenger side is most definitely way easier to get these plugs and coil packs out. What I ended up doing was removing the harness. So I unbolted it from the main connection point, and I took off the 2 sensors under the head, and I just pulled the whole harness up. That way I can just easily access both of those cylinders. Well, there we go. We have all 4 spark plugs removed from the block. I'm going to let it sit and kind of breathe for a few hours while I am at Josh's. And then hopefully, if I'm there, I can maybe try to convince him to build me a base map. I don't really see that happening, but I will try to be smooth with my asking down there. But when we get back, hopefully it's not super late, because I do still want to get a startup and get this car running tonight. We will throw those injectors back in. We will throw those spark plugs back in. I will be using my torch just to heat them up, put them back in, and pray that this thing starts up. Alright boys, it is way later in the day now. Just got back from Josh's surprise birthday party, and it's currently like midnight, almost 1 o'clock I believe. And I'm honestly quite exhausted. Had a few drinks, and it is bedtime for me. And unfortunately, made no progress with the STI today, which is unfortunate. I was hoping I would at least find the issue of what's causing it not to start, if there is a fault on my end. But after talking with Josh tonight, there's a few things that could be going on. One, maybe the timing jumped, and that is why it's not starting. I don't find that as probable, because I double-checked timing multiple times before I dropped it in. And it also sounds very healthy. Cranking it doesn't sound like it's off time, but sometimes it can skip timing and not sound like it. So that is a possibility. Another possibility is just I need a new base map that is adjusted for this cold start and this setup. So Josh is going to be making me a new map. I'm hoping I get it tomorrow, but tomorrow's his actual birthday, so I understand if he can't get it done for us tomorrow. We did go ahead and pull the spark plugs out, and there was some fuel on it, so obviously I pulled them out so I could let the motor breathe a little bit so the fuel would evaporate a little bit, so I'm not continuously just flooding this car. So I think the game plan is So tomorrow, the game plan is going to be, I never verified spark on the spark plugs. I don't see why it wouldn't be sparking. So before we throw these back in tomorrow, I will verify spark to make sure that we're actually getting spark and it's just not doing anything. From there, if we do have spark, I will pull off the timing covers, see if this motor is still in time. And if that is the case, then we will be getting this new base map on for this car. Obviously, I want a new base map anyway, but if everything checks out on this car, we should be able to start it how it is. But unfortunately, today was a pretty uneventful day of recording, I guess you could say. The only thing I can say we accomplished is we got the gauges wired in and they work properly, which is a good sign. The wiring was done correctly. Not much to it. 2 positives and 2 grounds, and that is all of it. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get that startup yet again. I do apologize for dragging you guys on day after day. I want to see this car start just as much as you guys, and more than you guys. This has been a long project. And really, I just want to get this car running so I can clean this up a little bit. As you guys can see, it just looks like shit just because everything is kind of just thrown together. So once this car actually runs is when we can go through and try to clean up this engine bay as much as possible, because it just looks like a rat's nest and I'm not a fan. But thank you guys so much for sticking with me here. I'm struggling to get this STI startup, but it's going to happen sooner or later, so make sure you guys stay tuned, because once this car is running, we have so many plans for it, and I am so excited to start them. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.